Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we are back as always with a ton of news, and we've got some fan casting to do today. We're gonna get into the Batman Part Two, and more specifically what the story's gonna be about, who the villain's gonna be. We have a few options picked out. Of course, there's some of the more obvious picks, the ones that all the fans want to see, and then there's a few that you might not be thinking about, but we'll bring that to the forefront and discuss that. We also have to, of course, talk about your comments. You guys have been leaving us some fantastic comments in the last few shows that we have done. So we picked out a bunch of them, and we're going to go through that. And there's, of course, more James Gunn related news that we always have to talk about. He's been doing a lot of media promotion of late for all the projects that he's involved with the DCU. So we're going to get into that and so much more. To do that with me, of course, as always, I've got John. How are you doing today, man?
Good.
That was very dramatic. That was very dramatic.
Yeah, I like being dramatic sometimes. Anyway, so I think it was Lenny that was talking about how she wanted to see us talking about like the storyline for the Batman Part 2. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a cool idea. Let's do it. So it's mainly from a villain point of view because, I mean, storyline is hard to figure out, but we do know a little bit about the storyline because I believe Matt Reeves said sometime last week that he wanted it to be about like Batman struggling being Batman and how that would cater to like the overall storyline. Like he blames himself for what happened. He doesn't see himself as Batman, but also dealing with like trying to be a more hopeful hero. It's like, okay, let's try to how like various villains could fit into those themes and those ideas. And I think that there's definitely a discussion what like certain villains could be. And the first one I wanted to go from least likely to most likely. Now, just because I have the most likely one doesn't mean that's actually going to happen. I mean, my least likely might actually happen, but the first one I have is a very obscure villain. He was rumored for a hot sec until I think James Gunn denied it or somebody denied it or like, it's not happening. But I think I think a really good villain to do would probably be Professor Pig. I think if you want to kind of just do what the first one was, but like kind of like a slicked back sort of character and, just kind of, he's a very new character. He hasn't been on screen before. I tried to find villains that like hadn't been on screen before or ones that got poorly received previously. So Professor Pig, he's essentially just a surgical like serial killer that wears a pig mask. That's kind of it's very simple, like
Yeah,
because
which could work well with the grounded universe that they're
it could work.
Yeah.
And so, but that might the reason I think it's the least likely to happen because it's very similar to the Riddler, who was essentially the Zodiac killer, but he wore green. So they might not go with that. However, the reason I think it would be a likely case was because you could bring in a new aspect of it, like the Riddler was very like Saw esque, and this one would be more like Jeffrey Dahmer kind of vibes,
I
or
can see that.
like very like kind of maybe like body horror kind of shit. So I think that could work. And on top of the fact, if we wanted this to be like focus on Batman, like really the Batman aspects of, Batman struggling being Batman and, struggling being this hero, trying to be more hopeful, especially when you have someone as deranged as this guy running around. Like I think Professor Pig, it would be very simple. Like he's just a serial killer. He's just like a, weird surgical, like he's very surgical, like kind of like Dr.
Some of this
Giggles.
artwork is very creepy, man. Like I think it lines up well with the first movie's,
Yeah, it's like
atmosphere.
like Dr. Giggles, but a little bit,
Yeah.
but straight laced.
Yeah.
I think and so the reason I picked him, I think that would be a very cool villain. And on top of the fact, it's just he hasn't been shown a lot. I'd like to see him. And if you really want to focus on the Batman aspects and not have like a lot of intricate shit with your villain, then have it be a Batman movie, focus on Batman's development and all that, but also have, this villain that just is very simple. Like, just focus on Batman. But it's like,
Although,
okay, he still has to stop somebody. You
yeah,
still have to have a villain, and have this one. It could kind of feed into his development, but it would mainly be Batman focused if that's what Matt Reeves was trying to go for. I could see this happening, but
yeah,
very
and
least likely.
I mean, to me, the thing about this villain that makes it a little more unlikely is because he's essentially another serial killer,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
it's like doing two of those in a row to me would feel a little repetitive. I know you can basically frame them very differently in terms of how you approach it, but
Yeah,
it still would feel like you're doing yet another
repetitive.
serial killer. It would feel repetitive. And the other point that you were trying to make, well, look, here's the thing. I think the first movie shows that you can have a great villain and you can still have the movie be told from the Batman's perspective, and it could still be a very much a
Right.
Batman movie. So I bet you that even if they did go in this direction, they would still want to make this character about as interesting as they possibly can,
Yeah.
because, like, for example, the Riddler is in Arkham. The Riddler didn't die at the end of the movie, and like so far the pattern seems to be these. I mean, the only people that die in this world are like the people who don't deserve to. Fuck the Penguin. But like, other than that, like, it seems like the villains seem to survive for more than one iteration. They're definitely not one and done, right? The Penguin is gonna be in his third project in this universe by the time the Batman 2 comes out. We know there's the Joker somewhere in Arkham. We have seen him
Yeah.
already, and of course we have the Riddler still hanging about. And beyond that, I mean, it looks like they've got Theo Rossi's character, like, still hanging out after the end of the Penguin. So
Hmm.
it's a world full of villains, and so I hope that if they do bring in Professor Pig, that the character sticks around. They make him about as interesting as they can. But like you said, not very likely, because it would seem like it's pretty
Exactly.
similar in spirit to the Riddler. So like, who do you have
Right.
next on the list, John? Because I know we have a few more to go through.
The next one I have, you can go two very different directions because they've been two very different versions of the character. But I think this is slightly more likely because, again, he's been rumored. It doesn't have to be just another serial killer if they do go in that aspect, but they can also go in the generic serial killer route, and that's Clayface. I think Clayface could be an interesting villain. However, there was the recent news of Alan Tudyk being cast as Clayface
In
in
the DCU,
the DCU. Now, that
right?
doesn't mean that Matt Reeves can never do that, but it's possible that due to the fact that it's in the DCU, they'll probably won't go into that direction for the Batman, as they want to try. Like, obviously, it's two different worlds. People won't be that confused, but
Right.
there's also, let's not try to get people confused if there is confusion there. So let's not try to do that.
I mean, look,
However,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I do think they can do something like that. They can still like do like the Phantom of the Opera, like the original Basil Karloff Phantom of the Opera, where it was just a guy in a mask, like just
Right.
killing people on set and all that. You
Hmm.
could just do that. Or you can do the clay monster that everybody knows. But again, with the former, there's the idea that it's just another serial killer, and that would be repetitive, much like Professor Pig. However, you could also, with the other side, it's like, well, they already have a Clayface in, the DCU. It doesn't fit the grounded aspect of the Matt Reeves universe, the Becks. So I think, that might be that might be struggle, but I still see this kind of likely because they can possibly make it like best of both worlds where it's grounded, but it's like not exactly like this, where
Right.
okay, he's a shapeshifter, quote unquote, but maybe they could just make him a master of disguise. Like
Yeah.
maybe he
Like a
like
body snatchers esque sort of a story.
yeah, where it's like
You know.
he like maybe he has like some sort of like genetic condition
Yeah.
where he like can where his like skin is very malleable and he
Mhm.
can like actually like twist and contort his face
Dude, I was gonna
into
say
like
there was at least one, if not multiple, episodes of the X Files that leaned into this concept.
yeah,
And I'm like, all Matt Reeves has to do is watch those episodes or that episode of the X
exactly.
Files, and or even just watch the animated series, the Batman the animated series where they had Clayface, right? That version of Clayface was more of just like the actor who. I
Yeah,
mean, although
well,
I think
until
they
he
went a little more
eventually
fantastic.
got
He did eventually, but they started him off like very grounded. So I think there's all these examples, and I was gonna also say you could very easily have Alan Tudyk play the more fantastical Clayface, which would look very different in the DCU. And remember, like Superman fights this big monster at some point in the movie that they were filming all that stuff in Cleveland for. Could it be a giant Clayface? And then in the
I
Matt
don't think
Reeves
they'd do that.
universe, they can do the much more grounded one to the point where, look, in the Penguin, the TV series, and even in the Batman, they don't always refer to the Penguin as a Penguin. They call him, like, it's a derogatory term. Oz does not like to be called a Penguin. So there's only a few characters that call him that, or those are the ones who are talking down to him,
Like Johnny
Whereas
VD and all that.
exactly, and then everybody else calls him Oz, or Oswald. So you could do a version here where you can go like, all right, Basil Carlo, like, or Basil, like, or like Carlo versus actually calling him Clayface, like, so you could differentiate it. Whereas in the DCU, you can always go, oh, that's Clayface, like, because it's a big, non-human monster at that point.
Yeah.
So you could do it. I'm just saying it's possible.
You can, like, since there's so many Clay faces, you can also make it like Lady Clay, like the Sandra Fuller version,
right?
For the Batman, and then use Basil Carlo or Matt Hagen, whoever, for that, and then do that. Right. So because there's so many iterations, you can like really play with it, or vice versa. So there's like 7 Clay faces, I think. So like fuck it, might as well go for that. And so I think it's less likely. It's slightly more likely, but still not like hugely likely, because of Alan Tudyk's casting. It doesn't fit the grounded nature, and if we're going by like the big Clay monster and the grounded Phantom of the Opera-esque serial killer, would be too much like the Riddler in terms of just another serial killer. So I think they could make it work. I think like you could like play around with it, like where he has like elastic skin, like clay-like skin, and like real, like malleable, and he's like maybe not a serial killer, but he like tries to like it could deal with like, oh, you have this character like really screwing up like the Batman's life, and like, oh, like, see, he disguises himself as like somebody in like Bruce's or Batman's life, and it's like
he could pretend to be Alfred. Can you imagine?
Like Alfred, pretend to be Gordon, pretend to be the new mayor. So
all kinds of great writing. I think from a writing perspective, there's so many opportunities to do a clever narrative where the Batman just seemingly can never catch up to what was going on. He's always one step behind. I think that could work really, really well, and it could do it in a way that feels grounded, because they could do it with like you said, very simply, just he can just sort of change his face up. It's almost like Mission Impossible in a way, like except pulling the mask off. Yeah. I think that could work really well. Clayface is one of those characters that has like these 2 very iconic iterations where you can make him work as, or make him or her work as like the more fantastical version or a much more grounded version. Not sure if that's the direction they're going to go in, but I think that's a great character, and they should definitely keep an eye on this character.
Sandra Fuller, that's my bad. But you got Basil Carlo, Matt Hagen, Preston Payne, Sandra Fuller, Cassius Payne, and Peter Malley. You have a ton of characters to go with, so like pick one and have your fun with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think it's Eve Carlo. I don't think it's the stripper. So like, calm down there too. So, but yeah, I think that could be good. It's still one of the lesser likely villains, but I think it could still be a little bit more likely than someone like Professor Pig. But the next one I have is one that's also been rumored a lot. All of these have been rumored at some point. I think they're just kind of, fiending for somebody. And so like, okay, let's just do fucking all these, because it's like, oh, we'll do this one, even though we haven't gotten a script yet and all that. So, anyway, but the next one I have is, in fact, Mr. Freeze. Now, is it unlikely that we'll ever get this character again? I don't know, but like, because the thing is, I know people are like, oh, the grounded, it won't work. I think you can make Victor Freeze work in a grounded.
Oh man, you
setting.
said Victor. Oh, fuck the Penguin. All right, could have saved.
But I think like this is more likely, because look at it this way: like the Riddler was done in the movies, like was done in Batman Forever, which not a lot of people liked because it was just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, yep.
So you had that. So it's like, okay, maybe Matt Reeves wants to go on the rectifying bad Batman villains train.
Isn't he like the last 90s Batman villain that hasn't been redone in a much better iteration? Because like Bane, Two-Face, Riddler, Joker, I'm like, he's the only one left, right? Like, who we haven't gotten.
Poison Ivy.
That's another one that's rumored, but like, I'm just saying. So maybe those are the two.
I think Poison Ivy is a little bit too much in one. I feel like you can't make the only one you can like make that work is if she's like a botanist serial killer, like she's like a Black Widow where she like kills people with like plants and like that's kind of. And I'm not talking about Black Widow. I mean a Black Widow, like a woman who kills her husbands and like she like all had her husbands like mysteriously die and all that shit. But I think you know, Victor Fries, I mean, it's not like totally out of the ordinary of like, oh, you can't make him grounded. It's like he's just a guy who wears a suit and he has like a genetic condition. Like that's what the Joker in this version
and
is.
Even that aspect of his character, Batman and Robin got right. I think the initial introduction of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze, and then there's a few scenes where he gets to do a little bit of character work. That was, I still think to this day that was well done. It's just everything else and all the puns were very, much, too out there.
Thanks, Akiva Goldsman.
Allow me to break the ice.
Yeah,
I still love it. I love it.
So you can make this character work even in a more grounded. So like I know I joked that like, oh, Mr. Freeze would just be a serial killer who just stuffs the bodies in freezers, and like we joke around like that, but I think you could still. I don't think the suit is too fantastical. Like. Because even then you have like certain technology that's like a little bit out there even for reality. So I still think you could like make a grounded version work. Maybe he's like maybe what they can do is like kind of like a Darkman thing where the character of Darkman, the fake skin he makes to like disguise himself can only work for like 90 minutes at a time in the daylight, and then it like combusts. So like you can maybe make it something like that, like, and that's like part of like the detective aspect. Like he can only go out in certain, like he takes like a solution where it like it injects like this cold solution, like almost like whatever, like something like antifreeze, but like actual freezing, and like he injects it into his veins, and he can like be like okay walking about. He's just maybe like looks a bit like pale, and like he can like do various things, but like he can only like be out for like in a day like 12 hours, but then he has to go and like hook himself up to a machine, and like they can do like something like that to like make it, where it's not if a suit is too fantastical for Matt Reeves, you can like do something like that. And I feel like there's a similar to Clayface, you could do a lot more stuff with Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is a character that a lot of people want to see. It takes place in the winter, so like there's it's been confirmed that part 2 is going to take place in the winter. So people are like, oh, and maybe that helps him, oh, I can only be out for 8 hours on this solution I made, but now that it's cold, I can actually survive for more. And like Batman has to figure out like, oh, he only goes out for like this amount of time and this, and this. And then he like, oh my God, it's cold. He's hiding in the old Gotham ice cream shop, and it's like it's just not something that's silly, but
like a McDonald's ice cream shop, because he finally figured out how to fix the ice cream machines, and now he just likes to have it.
Exactly. So I feel like you can make a lot of like aspects with Mr. Freeze work in this world. So I would love to see that, and I think it can work in Matt Reeves's world of like grounded. So like his obsession with grounded, even though Nolan did it better, but that's beside the point. Grounded. Oh my God, grounded. So
it's like you shouldn't have to say grounded as much as they do for this universe, right? I know that Nolan doesn't do as many interviews, so maybe who knows? Maybe if he talked about it as often, he might have used it. But it's just, I think it's when you have to say your project is grounded so many times. I'm like, are you trying to convince us or yourself? Anyway, I digress. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I just think that this could very much work in the Reeves world. Maybe not as much as my top 2 choices, which have been like the biggest things. Like that people have been rumored for. So I just think that this would be a good villain. I think they can make it work in Matt Reeves's world that he's created. And I think it would be really awesome. You could have a lot of actors that could fit into what they want to do. So I would say, yeah, do it. I think it would be really awesome. And I think, yeah, Mr. Freeze is definitely more likely than Clayface and Professor Pig. And you could also have like, it really feeds into the setting. Maybe not Batman as a character, but like maybe like him struggling with being Batman has him feeling like maybe his parents' death is really taking a toll, and then like there is the identifiable nature of Mr. Freeze who lost his wife, and so maybe you could feed into that as well. So like more of like a sympathetic kind of villain. I know sympathetic villains are getting old now and everyone's kind of sick of them. Like maybe in this case you could really
You could,
really make it
I
work, and
I think it's a
I would love to
character
see it.
that works well when he's a sympathetic villain, right? Because the
Uh-huh.
concept of how this character exists, it's so out there that one of the ways you can make him relatable and more grounded is to make him sympathetic. So I think it could work personally. I agree with you. I think oh, there you go. There's the Arnold one. That's
Yeah.
iconic. Iconic. It could to me this is already my favorite on the list. I would love to see an update on the Mr. Freeze character, and I want to see how Matt Reeves would potentially
I
approach it.
would just like to see a more like fantastical version that would fit into the world a little bit better than Reeves doing whatever weird thing he wants to do to keep it grounded. So I would like to see it, but like I would like to see like again the guy in the suit, and he's like a
Mhm.
Shakespearean tragedy, and
Yeah.
sympathetic villain. I would like to see that in like a more fantastical world because they can really go crazy with the character,
Hmm.
but also not have ice puns. So yeah.
Maybe one. Maybe just sneak one in that just just like, wait, was that a pun? Oh, I see what you did there. I don't know. I just want to see at least a couple of puns. I'm okay with that. Anyway, we got a couple of more options there to pick from. So who else we going to next?
I think the next one we have is a big rumor mill one, and I know he's considered like a lame villain, and maybe you could have another villain on top of that. But if you want to go for simple, but feed into Batman's backstory and his development, but not have it be like Professor Pig, and there's more to it there, simple and development, I think Hush would be a really good villain to have, because I think what would be really interesting if they do this with the Batman is like, okay, Bruce is struggling with being Batman, and he's even though he's trying to be more hopeful, he's not making this work. Maybe he's spending all of his time as Bruce Wayne. He's finally making Bruce Wayne a proper like vessel for like
Right.
whatever he wants it to be. Like he could be like the playboy, he could be the philanthropist, he could be both, he could be whatever he wants to be, but like he's like, I've been neglecting the human nature, because like if I'm trying to be more hopeful, I'm trying to like be better, and it's like I'm gonna pour everything, because like how the first one he poured everything into being Batman, so let's have this one he does the opposite effect, where he's pouring everything into Bruce Wayne, because Batman he's like almost fearful of being Batman, scarecrow, quote unquote, fearful of being Batman, get it. um but like and then like maybe like a third movie he finds that perfect balance. He's like, I know how to be, because I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman, not because I have to be, because I choose to be. But so like from one of the most hated Batman movies, actually understood Batman the fucking best. Fuck you haters. Anyway, but I think like doing like he's doing every extreme before he realizes what to actually do
Hmm.
as like two halves of a whole rather than one over the other. But something that can lead him into the balance of it. Okay, so he's pouring everything he can into Bruce Wayne, but then you have Hush, who takes who part of his persona of Thomas Elliot is like being a surgeon, and makes himself look like Bruce Wayne. Like maybe he has like the famous bandages at the beginning of the movie, but then he like unwraps himself, like maybe like an act 1 into act 2 like point is, you know, he unveils the bandages and he's like a perfect like like a perfect version of like Robert Pattinson, Batman, Bruce Wayne. So I think that could be really awesome. And I know Robert Pattinson could definitely do both. He can do a hero and a villain. So I think that would be really great because Thomas Elliot is this kind of deranged character, but he could like work more subdued. But I just think like having that, like, okay, he poured everything into Batman and he finally met a villain that like he met his match kind of thing, and it fucked everything up. Now he's gonna pour everything into Bruce Wayne. He's fearful of being Batman. He wants to be hopeful, but it's not working. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna pour everything into Bruce Wayne, and then he has a villain that comes in and fucks up the idea of him being more a better Bruce Wayne, which leads him by the end of the movie. He's like, I can't have one or the other. I need to find a perfect balance. And the third movie could be about that struggle of being both. But by the end, he's like, I can make this work because it's not just about me anymore. It's about the betterment of Gotham City and the people around me, and maybe you can include a Robin in there to help him do that. I'm just saying, Robert Pattinson said he wants to have a Robin, so I'm just saying, guys.
I'm gonna go in a direction here, which I don't know. Some of you guys in the chat might already be onto this. But here is a character that was in the first movie. Edward Elliot was the reporter that was investigating the Waynes and the Arkhams, and when he was pointed out, like, I think the Riddler implied that Thomas Wayne had him murdered, even though it looks like that was more of a Carmine Falcone did it so that he can put Thomas Wayne under his thumb. I wonder because at the one point in the movie we see the word hush in the whole one of the montages that the Riddler is sending out,
they
and
teased
then
it at some point. So
right, and then at one point we were wondering if the Riddler is the kid of the reporter Edward Elliot, but it turns out he's not. He's somebody completely different. He was just one of the people who was wronged by the city's corruption. But
I think that could be a case. But although in the comics he actually murdered his father.
But I'm saying, like, they don't exactly. We know the Penguin they changed the origin story of. I'm just saying, Edward Elliot could have had a family. He could have had a son, and maybe that son is now going to be looking for revenge. Yes, especially in light of the Riddler bringing all these events into the large, because it's no longer a hidden secret. All of this stuff is now on the news. Everybody knows about it, and maybe that leads Edward Elliot's son down the path of like revenge, where he's been looking for answers all his life, and all of a sudden the Riddler gave him answers. Maybe he visits the Riddler somehow in Arkham, and that starts his villainous turn. I'm just saying, I was like, there was an Elliot character in the movie, and I'm like, that's an easy connection. It's like the same reason why they're calling him Oz Cobb instead of Cobblepot, because that could tie him into another set of villains, right? Like for the Penguin, fuck the Penguin. But what do you think about this idea? I feel like this could be
also really good. But it's what's also really awesome is the reason that like Thomas Elliot finds out about Bruce Wayne's identity is that he does ally himself with the Riddler in the comics. So you could also add that aspect of like maybe Thomas Elliot, maybe he's like a doctor at Arkham, and he's like he wants to get revenge on Batman, and he's like talking with like the Riddler, and he's like, oh, Batman, well, I have a plan for you. So like it, man, and like it's really hush, but like Riddler gives him the idea and then tells him that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I was gonna say, in this movie, like the Riddler calls him a crusading reporter, but clearly the guy's just digging for dirt, right? Like the Gotham Gazette doesn't sound like it's like the newspaper of the town. And it's also, his aliases are kind of funny. It's like crusading reporter, lowlife, which are both from the movie. Which I think the low life one might be the way Carmine Falcone describes him when Bruce goes to talk to him about it.
His apparently
Um,
his great grandfather was called Edward Elliot. So just saying, guys, you
I'm
know.
it's the clues were there, especially because Matt Reeves has said as much, right? Like where we're going, like it's all there in the first
All
movie.
part of the
It's
plan.
part of the plan. But except they tease like three different things, so it's like you can't really pick one, which is why we're doing a list of like 5 picks here. So I just think that this has the most direct so far, the most direct connection to the first movie, which is what Matt Reeves has hinted at. So I think this could work really really well. This might be like one of those like a staring you in the face kind of things when the movie comes out. You're like, oh, of course, that's of course it makes sense. I'm just thinking like that that's a connection that could just play naturally into the second film.
Yeah.
And again, it ties into the whole like the cause and effect of the events of the first film and how they continue to affect Batman and Bruce Wayne, which is clearly another big motif they're going to explore, especially with how Bruce Wayne feels about
Yeah.
like being responsible for what happened in the first movie. So
Yeah. So I think that this is definitely the second most likely version. It could keep things simple, but it also like feeds into Batman's arc and feeds into like the idea of like maybe Bruce Wayne. She tries to make Bruce Wayne more of a persona, and like he's not just one or the other, and like it feeds into like the arc of these three movies. So I think that would be really good, and it wouldn't be too much. It would just be the one villain, kind of like how the Riddler was. But you also have like you also had Carmine, Falcone, and
the
all that shit. So
Penguin,
you also have
yeah,
like the Penguin could be like a background character, not a real villain or not really a really
right,
antagonist. Just like he's in the background. He's like he's there for a couple scenes, and he's like, "Hey, I'm
yeah,
here. I'll give you a hard
yeah.
time."
Colin Farrell said,
Rata, what are you
uh,
talking about? What are you showing me? What are you showing me? So, you know,
he did say he's gonna be in there for 5 to 6 scenes.
yeah,
So Colin Farrell did say he already kind of knows the size of his role, which, I mean, despite the fact that the script isn't done, I suppose that part of the script is done. So come
yeah,
on, Matt Reeves. But anyway, so we've got one more to get into. So let's do that. Let's finish out this list strong
yeah.
with what
The
looks to be the
fucking
most
the
likely.
biggest one, the most obvious one, the one that everybody wants. So it's most likely to happen, but I can see it not happening because it's too likely, and the fans are like clamoring for it. The thing is there has been a lot of evidence for it. So that's the thing I'm leaning towards, and that's Court of Owls. Court of Owls, or also known as the Parliament of Owls, like that's like the big fucking thing. So personally, I would prefer more of like a simple hush like storyline of like Bruce Wayne like dealing with like being Bruce Wayne because he lost hope, kind of lost hope of being Batman, even though he's trying his best. Court of Owls would be the big fucking like everything was planned, everything like it's like they begin to rise even more than they already have. It's either this big villain. It can feed into like Batman further lose it, like it becomes even darker. Like he
Hmm.
finds out about the Court of Owls, and he like maybe almost stops being Batman because he's like, what's the point if everything was strategically done to like not have Gotham be a pinnacle of goodness, but just this breeding ground of evil from the beginning. So it's like, what's the point? So that could definitely be like a good thing for Batman, a good thing for both Bruce Wayne. But I feel like this would be a better, it's the most likely one, but I feel like it would be all right, Batman, what the fuck are you doing? I think this would be a better finale villain. So I'm not saying it's like I think it's most likely, but it doesn't have to actually happen. I think it could be most likely for 2 or 3, but personally I think it would be better for a third movie. It would be a big finale, like once he's like trying to grapple with both lives. It's like, okay, no, Court of Owls is like this strategic sort of like Illuminati fucking type villain, and it's just like, what's the point? I think that would be better as a finale, but and something have it be a little bit more simplistic for the second movie, and then have that like concept of like further tease us on the Court of Owls. Could Court of Owls still happen in Batman Part Two? Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a really good. Uh, I think that would be a really good like step up. It might be a little bit too much for people though, and so I think Matt Reeves would want that to like have a lot of like cater to it properly, like have it like given the actual
Right.
like time it deserves. And I do think I think Hush would be better personally, but it
Yeah.
just there's a lot of information in regards to Court of Owls though, and
I
I think
that
that's
whole
what Matt Reeves is
montage by the
pointing to.
Riddler.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That whole montage by the Riddler and the news clip, the clip that he sends with before Alfred gets blown up and just barely survives. That whole sequence not only hinted at the idea of Hush, but certainly the Court of Owls was a big part of that motif. So to me, I mean, we could get Court of Owls, we can have them be in the background. Hush becomes the main villain of the second movie, and then the Court of Owls come to the fore in the third movie, and then their big henchman could be Oz Cobb, who we are speculating is connected to the Cobb family that's a part of the Court of Owls. So something that he might not even realize until the third movie. So I think that could be a great way to sort of progress these characters, where Hush is the
Hmm.
main villain of the second movie, Court of Owls are in the background, Penguin's sort of just like hanging about, they're doing his 5 to 6 scenes, as Colin Farrell said, and then in the third movie, the Court of Owls come more to the forefront, and maybe the Penguin finally becomes the main villain of the movie, and then if they go beyond that, maybe the Joker gets like they of course still have the Joker out there, so I think to me that makes it fairly likely. We've already, I think the most recent iteration of Court of Owls that we got was it like Gotham Knights, that TV show that ran for a season. The Court of
Yeah.
Owls were like the villains on the CW, which I don't.
Yeah.
It looked like a very surface level adaptation of like the characters in terms of like they got the designs right, but
Yeah.
the story wasn't very well written. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see again because these stories are so layered and told in a way that like that just lends itself naturally. It feels like it's perfect for the the Matt Reeves Batman universe. So I
Hmm.
think the Court of Owls could work really really well. I'm personally thinking this is again one of those things that might be staring us in the face, and I'd like to think that it could be a combination of the Court of Owls and Hush somehow because
Yeah.
the two of them
Although
sort
I
of
could see
needs
it
to kind of
like
exist on the same level.
Talon being like
Yeah.
a villain that could really be the like, so you have like, oh, if we want multiple villains we could have Court of Owls, but also like a Talon, and then that feeds into the
Yeah.
Cobb thing, and that feeds into the Penguin, and you know that could also work.
So, based on all these picks, John, which one do you think is most? I mean, you said that to you the most likely one is Court of Owls,
Yeah.
but which way do you think the story is most likely to go? My take on this is that the Edward Elliot character, the reporter that was killed by Carmine Falcone to keep the past of the Waynes quiet, not necessarily because Thomas Wayne wanted that to happen. I think his son is it could be the essentially Hush,
Yeah.
and that he becomes like our main villain, Thomas Elliot, and then the Court of Owls sort of lend him a helping hand. This is how we sort of start to figure out that the Batman tries everything he can, but like somehow Thomas Elliot is always one step ahead. How and why, who's funding him, what's the reason behind this, and that could be the Court of Owls, and I think the
Right.
Penguin could also get some character development along the way, and maybe he finds his way into like, oh, I was part of Gotham royalty, I didn't even know this, like somehow through his unknown the parental lineage from his father's side that we don't really know too much about yet maybe if it is Rex Calabrese, maybe Rex Calabrese was part of the Court of Owls somehow back in the day. I don't know. I'm just thinking like that would be a very natural way to continue the
Hmm.
story from the first movie, and especially where the Penguin leaves us off. Fuck the Penguin. Let me know what you think. What are your thoughts? Which direction do you think the story goes in? Of course, it's winter time, so Mr. Freeze could make all the sense in the world as well. But which direction do you think Matt Reeves is going with the second movie?
I think now is Court of Owls most likely, yes, but I don't think that that might, now talking about it, I think I think he might go with another simplistic villain that might feed into a bigger villain. Like I
Right.
think maybe we'll start to see Court of Owls stuff here, but they won't be like the main villains. And I think
Exactly.
Hush would be a big villain. I think Riddler
Mhm.
might come back into the fold if
Right.
they're using like the comic book accuracy there. Like, oh, he
Mhm.
actually did go to Riddler, and Riddler let him know that like who Bruce Wayne is, so that helped with his like revenge.
Right.
And like he starts attacking Bruce Wayne when like the Batman is like kind of not totally gone or anything like that, but
But
just
he's not around. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it would definitely be a really intriguing sort of way of handling things, and I really I think Hush would be a really good villain to go with, like because we haven't seen him before at all. It would be a very new direction. It fits. It's just like everything kind of is perfect. I know it's been rumored so much. I know like he's considered kind of a lame villain, but you know what? Maybe it's Matt Reeves' job to not make him lame.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you know,
And Matt Reeves so far has proven that they can write. He can write really well, and the team he's putting together around him can do a
putting
fantastic
a
job.
team of someone of excellent abilities, so you're fast.
And I can just imagine the Bruce Wayne does one of those things again where he like draws and spray paints and spreads out everything in his ancient gothic skyscraper of a home, and then he's like, all right, Court of Owls, Hush, Thomas Elliot, Edward Elliot, how is this all tied together? It's all connected. Question mark?
And
No,
it's
maybe
like
not a question mark,
you
but
know, and it's like like Charlie Day in that episode of It's Always Pepe Sylvia, and it's just like it's just like
yeah.
it's just that.
I think
And
this would
fucking
make all the
Bruce, get
sense
rid
in
of
the
that
world.
goddamn Aaron Carter emo Peter haircut for fuck's sake.
Well, I would love to see if this is the direction they go in, because I think when you put the pieces together, it makes sense that the Court of Owls and Hush would be how you go about it, because of course we already know that Matt Reeves has been hinting heavily that the first movie set up a lot of what we're going to see in the second movie, like a lot of the pieces of the puzzle are already there in front of us. So this would make the most sense. Now, having said that, of course we do have some DC news to get into, but before we move on, as always, if you guys enjoyed this fan casting for the villains of the Batman Part 2 and potentially like what the story's gonna look like, let us know in the comments what you think, your theories, your comments, and we'll get into that. If you guys have any other ideas, any other villains that you like to see potentially instead, or maybe you have a different idea for what the story is going to be, let us know in the comments below. But right now, we're gonna pivot over to some news. Of course, there's been this rumor going around, and we sort of addressed it yesterday, John, but I wanted to kind of quickly come back and talk about it a little bit more. Daniel Craig is reportedly Luca Guadagnino's top choice to play
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Rock for his DC Studios film. Now, there is a note here that says no offer has been made.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from one of those Hollywood insiders and like scoopers. Now, I will say this: there is no confirmation as of right now from any legitimate source, especially not James Gunn, and certainly not one of the big trade outlets in Hollywood,
Right.
that Luca is even doing a DC Studios film. I think he said that he would like to after, I think it was like Venice or one of the big festivals this year, where he debuted his film with starring Daniel Craig, and then
Mm-hmm.
the story sort of picked up from there, and the rumor has never quite gone away. And I think in the beginning it simply was, hey, the two of them just worked together. Daniel Craig was his leading man. It makes all the sense in the world for them to then kind of collaborate on another project. So
Right.
I'm beginning to wonder. I mean, I think back then we sort of like just kind of played it off as like, oh yeah, this just looks like it's he said something, Daniel Craig just worked with him on a movie, and that's where like somebody decided, oh, 1 + 1 = 2, so therefore rumor. So do you
Right.
think that that's still kind of where things are? Do you think this is kind of maybe it's evolved to something a little more legitimate? Do you think Luca is actually doing a DC Studios film? And if so, do you even think this is part of the DCU, or is this going to be something that's entirely its own? Because I know that, of course, James Gunn said there's an unannounced project coming out after Lanterns. I wouldn't imagine it would be fast tracking whatever Luca has in mind. But then again, you got to strike with the iron is hot, because directors who have a big film at a festival may make their next project and completely fall off the map. So it's kind of like when Chloe, what's her name? Was it Chloe Zhao who made the Eternals? Like she had just won an Oscar, and then Eternals wasn't very good, and I haven't seen her do a ton since. So I'm like, it could be that kind of a situation maybe, but like
Yeah.
I just want to get your opinion on how legitimate this news is. Should we even care about it or pay attention to it?
It doesn't seem very legitimate. I mean, it wouldn't be totally out there. He is 56 and our Green Lantern is 59, so it's not totally out there, but I think after like James Bond, he probably wants to get away from like action movies for a while, like a good long way. He's getting older. He's like, I don't feel like doing that. That's not my thing anymore. And something as heavy as Sergeant Rock, I don't think he would want to do. And I think it's just like he worked on him in his last movie. Let's do it again. Like it's like it just feels like a whole bunch of non-news kind of crap.
I mean, he's getting a very good, comfortable paycheck doing those Knives Out movies for Netflix, and I think he's okay doing that. I know Daniel Craig likes to push himself, but like you said, I don't know if this is the way to go. And he's really done any comic book stuff before. So of course we recently were like, oh, Denzel's never gonna do comic book stuff, and now he's gonna be in a Black Panther thing, whatever role he's gonna have. Apparently Ryan Coogler's writing one for him, so it's possible that Daniel Craig makes a turn. He's like, well, all that money from Netflix is not enough. I want another big paycheck from DC. So, but yeah, it just feels like this to me this rumor is still on the same level as Steven Spielberg wanting to do, what was that? Was it Black Hawk? Black Hawk, right? Like it's still at that same level. That it's may never happen. It seems very wishy-washy. It seems like one of those things where Steven Spielberg expressed a desire once upon a time, and people still wish that it would happen. So that's why they keep talking about it. Now, of course, we could find out tomorrow that James Gunn announces this is an official thing, but until that happens, I mean, I don't think there's enough evidence out there to suggest that Daniel Craig is actually going to be playing Sergeant Rock, that Luca Guadagnino is going to actually be directing a DC Studios film. It just seems like it's a rumor that was born out of that festival circuit, and they had a lot of success with their most recent film. So to that end, congratulations and great job and all, but I just don't think this is a project that's currently in development. But if that changes, if there's more development on this front, we will definitely get back to it and we'll talk about it. But until then, it's a rumor, and you got to take it with a big.
It's only a rumor. Get out your giant fucking grain of salt.
Yeah. Now, speaking of grain of salt, I'm beginning to wonder if Matt Reeves is ever going to finish the script for his movie, because James Gunn recently said that, hey, we've got both Batman Brave and the Bold and the Batman 2 currently moving forward, and his specific quote was,
right now we're moving forward. It's happening right now. That's
with
happening
Brave and the Bold.
Now.
That's happening right now. And then Matt is writing the Batman 2, and that's happening right now. But we have been talking about it all week that hey, James Gunn denied the fact that because here's the thing, Matt Reeves has never confirmed it, but he's sort of hinted at the idea that the script is done. But then James Gunn said that's not correct. The script isn't done yet, but it is going on. It is ongoing, and that Matt Reeves is working on it, which was a little, like, huh? Like that was one of those moments where it seems like either the two of them are not communicating, or we were just misled as an audience by Matt Reeves himself. And then, of course, we most recently heard, even on yesterday's show, we talked about how James Gunn said until he gets a script that he is happy with, he's not going to move forward with a movie, for Batman Brave and the Bold. So that script seems to still need a lot of work as well. So as far as the state of the Batman franchises goes, John, which of these movies are you more excited about? Which of these do you think? Obviously, we know one of them, the Batman 2, has a release date. Brave and the Bold does not. So you could say that we know that that one's going to come out sooner. But which one do you think has better prospects based on where things stand today?
Neither. I think it's neither, because it's just we've gotten nothing from either of these. The only thing we've gotten from the Batman Part 2 is that it got delayed. Like that's the only thing. We haven't got like anything, like nothing about a villain. We've got like the most we've gotten is like the bat signal in the Penguin, and like Matt Reeves was like, it's going to be about music, Batman. It's like, okay, congrats, thank you for that. So, and then nothing about Brave and the Bold except for the initial announcement that Andy Muschietti is going to be working on it at some point. We don't know when, but at some point he's going to fucking.
I guess he's waiting for a script.
So I have no clue. I would say maybe Brave and the Bold, because I feel like James Gunn has a little bit more of a hand in that, and maybe
Clearly,
we're
he's
just
the one
not
who needs to
seeing it.
greenlight it, right? So like
Yeah.
he's definitely
Well,
gonna.
and he even
Yeah.
said the Batman, the Bex. That's Matt Reeves' thing. Yeah, he's like, I get the say because I'm the guy, I'm the head
Right.
honcho, but it's like
But he
I'm
trusts
still
them.
letting Matt Reeves do whatever the fuck he wants with
Exactly.
that. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think for me though, I would still say the Batman 2 has a better prospects because you've got a director who's also writing the script. You've already got your lead actor cast. Like we don't know who the DCU Batman is still. We don't know who Damian Wayne is gonna be. We don't know who's gonna play Talia al Ghul. We don't know what other characters we're gonna get in that movie and what other Bat family members we're gonna get. Whereas for the Batman, we know a lot of the pieces already. We know that Zoe Kravitz may or may not come back. It's possible, but she's already Catwoman. Her character is still around. We know the Joker is still hanging about. We know the Riddler is still hanging about. We definitely know that the Colin Farrell's Penguin is gonna have 5 to 6 scenes. Colin Farrell said it himself. So there's a lot more information, and of course we have a release date. So unless they move it another time, which I doubt they will, I'm more confident in the Batman 2 happening right now. It just happens to be that the script isn't done, and I do wish that that wasn't the case.
right.
But I personally think that there's a lot more question marks around Brave and the Bold, especially in light of what James Gunn said this week,
That's
than there
fair.
are around the Batman 2. So I personally am looking forward to more of the Batman 2s because it's a little more of a known commodity, and I'm excited to see where the story progresses to. And of course, if they go off of the villains and if they pick any of them, any of the ones, or maybe even multiple from the list that we had earlier in the show, I think they would be doing themselves, a real solid. So with that said, let's kind of switch gears to the DCU proper because Creature Commandos is literally like 2 weeks out at this point, like I think a day and 2 weeks. So with that in mind, John, we just got some official stills from the show. Of course, we've had a couple of trailers. Now we're starting to get these promotional images. The cast of the show and James Gunn have been promoting it by, making media appearances with like, Collider, IGN, comicbook.com. But I'm looking at these images, and again, I think the quality of animation is a step above what you would see like in the DCAU, like a lot of those movies, and also it looks like the writing so far based on the trailers is fantastic. What are your thoughts again on Creature Commandos, the marketing effort that they have put behind this so far, and then based on the photos you're seeing, are you getting more excited, less excited? Are you still sort of just like we'll see how it is when it starts to air? Like
I
where are you at
mean,
with Creature Commandos?
it's exciting. As I've said in the past, I'm like, I don't like it like being another Suicide Squad, and you know, James Gunn using his tropes for like the fifth time now. So it's like, that's a little disconcerting, but the animation still looks cool as fuck. I like the cast. I like these characters from what
Mhm.
I've seen of them. I feel like there's going to be a lot of Rule 34 of Nina Mazursky. I'm just going to say that right now. But Cersei looks cool. Anya
Yeah.
Chalotra, she's making the jump to see
Mhm.
DC while Henry Cavill jumped off DC. So that's
What a tragedy that was, man. Oh God. I hope they bring
um
him back
now we just
eventually.
need Freya Allen to get in here as well. That would be
Yeah.
cool. Honestly, I would have loved to seen her as Supergirl. That would have been amazing. But I think she's a great casting choice in terms of Evil Witch.
Right.
She's got it. Boom, there you go. Sexy evil witch. Yeah, that fits. So you know what? I'm excited, and I hope to see her against Wonder Woman someday. Maybe she'll show up in Paradise Lost,
I
because
would love
Cersei
that.
is centuries old, so like it
Yes.
works.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something there, like some like bad blood between like Hippolyta and Cersei, and then that causes like Cersei to hate them even more and whatnot. So like
Yeah.
whatever they do, I think that would be cool. And I think Cersei's definitely a weird villain for the Creature Commandos, but you know what? I think he'll make it work. I think he'll make
Yeah.
it work, and I'm reasonably excited. I'm like, oh my god, I need to see this tomorrow. But I'm like, yeah, this looks cool. This looks cool.
It looks good. It looks cool. I want to see what the first two episodes are like, and then from there, I think hopefully the audience will continue to grow like it did for the Penguin. But we only have to wait 2 more weeks, and even less than that, to get the reviews, and then of course the debut with 2 episodes, and then we'll be able to watch it for a good 2 months. Now, there is a little bit more James Gunn related content we got to get through. So he keeps being asked about what is comic book accurate versus what is not. And one of the answers we went through yesterday, but then he also had another response because somebody asked him, "Hey, we can assume Green Arrow will be present in the DCU, but can you just say that he will be comic accurate? I mean, I love Stephen Amell's version, like many, but we all know it was basically Batman, not Green Arrow," which is a very common thing that a lot of fans, a lot of very common accusation that they lay on the Arrowverse version of Green Arrow. Now, James Gunn responded to that saying, "I suppose it depends on what you mean by comic accurate, quote unquote." And then he kind of posts, a few examples of the Green Arrow where the tone varies incredibly. Of course, you've had
Yeah.
the Green Arrow crossover with the Scooby-Doo franchise. There's different versions of the Green Arrow in the comics. We have seen different versions of the Green Arrow in the animated series universe. Of course, here you're seeing a much darker version. So he's had crossovers with other characters like the Green Lantern. Here's the Welcome to the American Nightmare Green Arrow from DC Rebirth. So what are your thoughts on, again, just a comic accuracy argument? The idea that, they will probably have a version of Green Arrow, but it doesn't need to be a version that feels, because, like very lighthearted and jokey. It could be dark, it could be lighthearted, but neither of those necessarily is comic accurate because we have seen different versions. It's like we have had the Adam West Batman and we have had the Robert Pattinson Batman, right? Like where do you land on this subject?
I think it's just one of those cases where I think I agree. Like, oh, what do you mean by comic accurate? You can mean Silver Age, you can mean Bronze Age, you can mean
Exactly.
Golden Age, you can mean any. It was like you could literally mean like a guy who saw a burglar, a robbery. I think it was like I think somebody was robbing a bank.
Mhm.
He was going to a costume party as Robin Hood, and he's like, "I'm gonna put a stop to this," and that's what happened. That was like Golden Age Green
Right.
Arrow
Mm-hmm.
or like Silver Age, and like it wasn't until much later that we got him stranded on the island and
Right.
him discovering like China White's operations and all that. So yeah, I think like it could mean a number of different things, and that's what I think people need to like really pay attention to and like see where it's like, well, what's comic accurate to you? Because a lot of things can be comic accurate. Like you could have like All-Star Superman is comic accurate, but then at the same time you have Dark Knight Returns Superman, which is comic book accurate, which is him being a fucking government stooge. And you have that, or you could have Silver Age Superman where like the issue where like Lois Lane cucks Superman's mom. So it's like, is that comic accurate to you? So I mean, it is. There was a whole fucking issue where Lois Lane turned black. It's like every imaginable thing you could see in a comic book, it's been done. So everything is technically comic accurate. So it's like, what do you mean by that? It's like, oh, you can mean fucking anything. So it's that comic accurate I don't want to say has lost anything, but he's making a fair point here that it's
Yeah.
like there's so many iterations of these characters. It's like comic accurate is so many. So that's why it's like usually the core of the character stays the same. And this guy,
Right.
he's like a Green Arrow is usually more often than not a social justice kind of billionaire character who cracks jokes and wears like a fucking Robin Hood outfit.
Right.
So, I think that like as long as you do something that along those lines, you're gonna get the character. And that's what, Green Arrow was. It was just he was a lot darker than
Right.
Green Arrow usually is. And
Yeah.
I don't Stephen Amell was fine for what he was given. So,
I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was one of the better shows in the CW
I mean,
Arrowverse. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know it's like very poorly written, but that's a whole nother argument
But it's
for
the
another
CW.
day.
Like you
But
gotta have a different set of expectations. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's
so I think
yeah.
he brings up a fair point here where it's like comic accurate. Well, look at the fucking nearly 100-year history of these characters and tell me what the fuck is comic accurate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fair. That is completely fair. Speaking of James Gunn, he is supposedly thinking about not supposedly, he said it himself. He has got a number of projects he could potentially pick to be the next one that he works on. So he was asked recently, like, hey, what are you directing next in the DCU? And he basically answered the question saying, I have about 4 different things I could do, and I'll kind of bounce back and forth between those projects. I'll see which one really resonates with me, and then that's the one I'll do. That somehow is very specific and yet very vague at the same time. So I wonder, like, A, what those 4 projects are, and then B, which one do you think James Gunn might be leaning towards the most?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because
Um,
I'm like, are there even 4 projects that are currently in development that are like that we know about that James Gunn would be interested in? Like, it's I feel like maybe he wants to do Swamp Thing, but then again, like we had James Mangold attached to that one.
okay, so
The
says he
Authority,
has 4 projects, but the thing
yeah.
is, I mean, we could do a whole nother episode
He
on
said
this,
4 different
maybe another
things, so I don't know if that
things,
means
exactly.
series, and maybe he wants to write a comic book for DC. I
Uh,
think he's doing that actually. So,
yeah, so, like,
uh,
I think, I mean, it could be a number of different things. It could be a TV show, it could be a movie, it could be a video game, unlikely, but it could be a book, could be a comic book, as you said. It could be a, an audio drama. I
mhm.
don't know. It could be
Maybe he wants to direct
Morse
an episode of
code.
Batman: The Cape Crusader,
Maybe he might make it good.
or maybe he wants to
Uh,
do a little bit of Harley Quinn season
he might make
6.
it good. Which I didn't actually know this. It got delayed. I thought that was still
Yeah.
coming out this month, but apparently got delayed. So
I did. But okay, so let me then kind of restate the
revert back.
question. And yeah, which of these? Okay, let's just forget the fact that he said 4 things, because we can speculate, like you said, to no end what those 4 things could be. But let's say of the projects that are announced so far by James Gunn himself, of course, or whether it was as part of the big presentation that you did a year and a half ago, or anything that he's announced since, which of those projects that we don't already know he's working on, like Peacemaker, like Superman, like Future Commandos, which of the others do you think he's most likely to get involved in and direct, whether it's a movie or a TV series?
I think, like, maybe out of the ones that have been announced, I
Right.
would say, like, I think The Authority would make sense because that has nobody attached to it, and I think somebody mentioned that was a passion project of his. I could see
Right.
him making that work, but I don't want to see, well, and I don't, and maybe Teen Titans as well. I could see, like, because those are the only 2 movies that doesn't have anybody attached to it. But I
Mhm.
could also see, like, Booster Gold being something along that lines
Yeah,
of,
especially if it's Chris Pratt.
or Blue Beetle. I could see the Blue
Yes,
Beetle animated show also being his type of
his cup of tea. Yeah,
up his alley. It
yeah.
just, I just want to see, like, I know James Gunn's the creative guy behind it and all that, so I just want to see him, like, I don't mind seeing him direct a project every once in a
Mhm.
while, but maybe he should, like, stick to being like a showrunner or like a TV director, because
Right.
I would want to see, because the whole great thing that he's promising with the DCU is doing a whole world of, like, different voices in the same cinematic universe.
Right.
That, like, we're getting, like, maybe a body horror thing from James Mangold with Swamp Thing. We're getting a
Mhm.
cosmic revenge tale with Supergirl from Craig Gillespie. We're getting, a familial, like, Batman film with Andy Muschietti at the helm. We're getting so many different things. And it's just like, I don't want to James Gunn to just be directing every fucking movie now. Like, The Authority,
I
would
get
it be
that.
cool? Yeah, but I'd like
Yes.
to see someone who could, like, do, like, an ensemble,
Mhm.
insane 80s vibe kind of like, I would love to see, like, David Leitch, like,
Right.
direct that. That
Oh,
could
that would
be
be a good one.
cool.
Yeah.
Shane Black would be awesome for that.
Yeah.
Uh, I know you love Bayhem. Fuck it, Michael Bay, have him do that.
Oh
So
man, that would be
it would
quite
be
the
terrible, but
aesthetic.
it would be fun.
I wouldn't
Uh,
mind it at all. Like I just,
get the
yeah.
guys who did Batgirl, like, they lost the chance to do that. They're doing
Yeah.
Bad Boys movies, which are
Adil
very
Urbi and Bilal Al Fallah.
insane
Yeah, yeah.
80s, 90s
Yep.
throwbacks. That could kind of work for
They
The
do a really good
Authority.
job with it, and they're really good with making the most out of like smaller budgets too. So I mean, I think as far as being fiscally responsible directors, they do a fantastic job of
Yeah,
maximizing
I
their
would say, yeah,
resources.
maybe get them. That could be a
So,
lot of fun too.
I mean, and The
So,
Authority is going to be an expensive movie regardless of how you go about it. But I think they could do a really good job because they've shown that they can make a big budget blockbuster, without necessarily spending $200 million.
mhm.
And DC still has to kind of find the balance there where they have the money to throw at these projects, but you still don't want to like have another Joker Folia do situation on your hands,
Mhm.
where you clearly overspent, and that's what the DCEU did all of last year. Seemingly, every project seemed like it had way too much money, going into making it, whereas it made most of them didn't make their money back. So with that said, of course, whichever project James Gunn decides to do next, I'm sure it's going to be great. And like you said, hopefully he does give the other creators a chance to do their thing, so that way it doesn't feel like every other thing is coming from James Gunn. We do want to hear more of those and see more of those voices and those stories be told from different perspectives that are not just James Gunn's. And I'm sure he's aware of that as well. Now, with that said, there is one other thing here. Now, we addressed this yesterday, partly kind of thinking about James Gunn kind of just rolling off the tongue saying after Lanterns there's an unannounced project, and then he didn't elaborate on it whatsoever. But there was speculation that maybe it could be that Teen Titans movie that Ana Negreira is writing. And then when you look at the lineup here on screen, I'm like, we know we already have Damian Wayne and Blue Beetle coming in. We know we're probably going to get a Cyborg at some point. And then we have all sort of been speculating about Star Sapphire. So, and then we know that Nightwing,
Well, that's
or slash
Starfire, not Star Sapphire.
Oh,
So,
sorry, Sapphire. Yeah, and then we've also been speculating about Nightwing there, as showing up in Batman the Brave and the Bold, and then you can kind of extend from there and be like, all right, if you're gonna do a Titans movie, you're gonna have Raven, you're gonna have Beast Boy. So, do you think the Titans could be that next project, and do you think this lineup here could be pretty
I
close
think,
to
yeah,
what we get?
I think that could make sense. I think James Gunn, again, James Gunn works well with ensembles. So
Yeah,
Superman seems like the outlier where it's not an ensemble. I mean, he has like a lot of side characters, but it's not, it's a Superman movie with a bunch of side characters. It's not like a Superman family movie or something like that.
yeah,
So with this lineup, like I feel like Damian Wayne, Beast Boy, and Blue Beetle and Cyborg would make sense. And
hmm
Raven, I wouldn't like. I thought Judas Contract was a pretty decent movie. I thought it was good. Like I liked
yeah.
it. I know some people have problems with it. I mean, there is a one
I
glaring issue that is an elephant in the room
I
of
know
old
you know
school
you're gonna go
comics,
there.
but like
Yeah,
okay, ignoring
Starfire.
that part, I thought it was a good movie.
Yes,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Starfire is kind of
yeah,
overly sexualized a lot, but like what
yeah.
female hero hasn't been in comics? So it's just like a little awkward. But I still thought Judas Contract was a good movie. So I I I want, however, I want it to just be teens. I don't want like chaperones like Nightwing and Starfire. Like, I don't want that. I want the Teen Titans to be their own thing
I
of
like that
just
idea.
teenagers.
I just
Like,
think it depends.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
mind seeing Starfire, but I would want to see her as a teenager, or she's an adult and she's a love interest to Nightwing, and just have them not be there. Like, I'd like to see Damian Wayne. Blue Beetle makes sense, even though he's not really a teenager. Um, you have Beast Boy, you could have Raven, Cyborg, but have them be teens. You could have Kid Flash, you
right,
could have Wonder Girl, but I think that might be like inviting heroes that are not in the world yet. So,
right.
like try to stick with like the new Teen Titans, the Marv Wolfman
Yeah,
stuff, where it's like, but instead of Dick Grayson, it's Damian Wayne, but then you have Beast Boy. And then in addition, you have Blue Beetle, you have Cyborg, you have Starfire, you have oh, who else is there? Jesus Christ, I'm blanking on them.
I mean, I think you got a lot of the
Did I get
characters that
all of
you.
them?
I think you did.
Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg,
Raven, right? Like
Raven,
Raven. I mean, yeah, yeah. I think you got
and
him.
Robin. I think I got all of them
Robin,
because I know
exactly.
Wonder Girl and Kid Flash were a part of the original lineup, and then they
Right.
left like a couple issues into the Marv Wolfman and
Yeah.
George Perez
I mean, but like the most
version.
famous one is the one from the animated series, and
Yeah,
they
that's
weren't in there.
essentially the new Teen
So
Titans, which
right.
was the Marv Wolfman version. So, like,
Yeah.
I would say stick with that team because that's the one that everybody knows.
Yeah.
But like, also those guys aren't really connected to heroes, like like heavily like Rob, like Damian. Plus, Damian Wayne has been confirmed, so that's easy enough. Beast Boy is connected to Doom Patrol, but that's not something you really need to like say.
Right.
So, I mean, they could be mentioned because Doom Patrol is awesome. Like,
I
and
did love
that
Doom
would be
Patrol.
cool
Yeah.
to have. Cyborg isn't really connected to anybody. Raven isn't connected to anybody. Starfire isn't connected to anybody. So like it just makes sense because Kid Flash, okay, he's the psychic of the Flash that deals with a whole backstory that maybe James Gunn doesn't want to touch upon yet. Same with Wonder Girl, and her backstory is beyond fucked. Like no matter what they try to do to make it make sense, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, and it also deals with Wonder Woman who has not been part of the world yet. Yes, they have Paradise Lost, but we haven't gotten Wonder Woman yet.
Right.
So, and Aqualad is another one that was at one point that brings in Aquaman, and Aquaman isn't part of the world yet. So, I would say stick with like heroes that aren't connected to another larger hero. And at least with Blue Beetle, yeah, he's connected to Ted Kord, but like Ted Kord has been confirmed. He's out there, he's alive, somebody is there. Like they have that. So, I think dealing with with heroes, I would prefer not to have Starfire unless they plan to have Dick Grayson be the head. Because I would like to see, I think Nightwing and Starfire work better as a couple, and I would like to see them together. So I wouldn't want to have like an older Dick Grayson Nightwing-esque character and then Starfire be a teenager. Like I want to see them together.
I think if they do go that direction, it could be almost like the Fantastic Four, except you have like 6 characters, like more of a familial feel to it.
Yeah.
I think that could work. This could certainly be that next project.
What's real? It's family.
I didn't even try to say family. I said familial. Okay, I purposefully tried to sidestep the whole situation.
That's why I did the Mi Familia clip. Good family, bad family, Mia Familia.
You know when you have your own stuff used against you, like what that feels like. That's what this feels like. But hey, you know what? If they do end up doing Teen Titans in 2020, late 2026, early 2027, that would mean that they're already really confident in the script that Ana Negreira is working on, which is possible because that seems to be how the process went for Supergirl. She brought something that they really loved.
You know what? It depends on. I think she's supposed to be like 20. Maybe they can make it like Titans instead of Teen Titans. But like Ana Negreira is writing Supergirl, she's writing Teen Titans. Maybe Supergirl will be part of the Teen Titans. It might be a bit much because she might be a little bit too much for the team because she's overpowered a bit.
She's the most overpowered character on that team. Yeah,
but maybe they can make it work. I mean, it's got the same writer. It like kind of works.
It could, but I don't know if we want to force that together. Like you don't want to jam that in, like bring her in if you don't have to. And there's already plenty of other very interesting characters in that lineup to explore. Now, of course, speaking of family, the one character that has a very twisted relationship with the family, fuck the Penguin, because that's essentially how I feel about him. Like, god damn that dude. Anyway, but the show is now done airing, and guess what? We do now know when we're gonna get the Blu-ray release, the 4K Blu-ray Ultra HD. You can get it on February 25th, 2025. The whole series, or at least if you want to believe that there's more than one season, the Penguin season 1 is going to be out on physical media. We were talking about it more recently that the steel books were going to come out as well, and I believe that I don't remember if the dates are the same, but February 25th, 2025 looks to be when you can get it on Blu-ray. 4K Blu-ray, HD Blu-ray, whichever version of Blu-ray you prefer. You can go get it on Amazon, through Best Buy, whichever retailer that you go to near you, wherever you live. Of course, it's already available for pre-ordering. You can actually go to Amazon. The link is right there in that post that I've got up on the screen. You can pre-order it now and then get your copy with the 8-episode series in 4K Ultra HD. Fuck the Penguin will be available on February 25th, 2025. Until then, you can pre-order it. I just wanted to kind of bring that up because again, just probably the best TV show, or certainly the best superhero TV show, certainly the best comic book-based TV show, certainly the best DC TV show of the year. And it's one of those that you can actually get on disc. It's rare these days. A lot of these things just live on streaming now. So it's good to see that. Now, of course, before we do finish up, John, we have to
Mhm.
get into some comments from you guys watching, because you leave us some fantastic comments and we want to get into them and address them, talk about them. So Jay, you had a couple of comments on the show yesterday, and you've got one here. We talked about this last week, John, where we talked about Lanterns casting Purna Jagannathan in a role titled Zoe, a character that's not in the comics. So it's going to be an original character, but she's going to be playing what seems to be either a leading role or certainly a significant supporting role in the Lanterns TV show. So Jay said, totally missed the confirmation of Purna yesterday. Seems to be continued good talent added to the cast. I like the description of the character that was provided. Purna Jagannathan, who will play Zoe, an effortlessly confident and poised woman in any setting, and as composed and cunning as the influential men around her. In my opinion, this does not seem to be the description of a woman that is the love interest of Jon Stewart. Sounds more like the description of an antagonist. Maybe
Yeah.
Zoe and William McCann are influencers in America's heartland. That's a theory from JJ that I would like for you to sort of speculate on, or what's your opinion on this? Do you think that Zoe is going to be an antagonist in this show, or do you think she's just like another character who, she has a presence, but maybe she's sort of like a neutral? Maybe she is. Maybe even if she's not the love interest of Jon Stewart, maybe she's on the side of the good, right? Like, I don't know. Where do you think?
Maybe it's both. Porque no los dos. Maybe she
Could be.
is like the love interest of John, but she's like swindling him. And that could definitely be the
Yeah.
case. And like Hal is like, don't listen to her. That I got a bad feeling. And being a rookie, maybe he's like, well, pussy, my guy. Like, I mean, come on. So,
Of course, that's where you go with it. Okay,
I mean, I'm thinking in the mind of like a guy who's like
cool.
30 years old, hasn't really dealt with the world all that much outside of maybe his, I don't know if they're doing the Marine thing. They might not. I don't know. But like, if they are, it's like, well, okay, fine, he's doing with the Marine, but like maybe he just can't get like the clues in the eyes. I don't know. Like, maybe he's a really dumb Marine. So, and he's just like, she's Hal. I mean, have you seen her? Like, hello. So, and he's just thinking not right. And, she's like swindling him. Hal sees it. He doesn't. So maybe that could be the case. That could be definitely the case.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see it. I can see that. But certainly it's interesting to see again, new characters being added to a show, because usually whenever we get a casting, we're like, oh, we can tie it to a comic book and then kind of speculate about how they're going to adapt that character. But whenever they create a new character, then it sort of opens up, the floodgates to possibilities that we wouldn't have thought of before. And of course, Purna Jagannathan has a very impressive resume, so seeing how she fits into the show in what is already a stacked cast is going to be very interesting to see. And Jay, I think your theory might be onto something. I guess we'll find out sooner than later, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Purna brings to the show. So with that said, let's move on to our next comment. O'Shea Goodman wrote this into us. He said, "Great DCU Daily, welcome back." I don't know if you meant like welcome back as in, I think you haven't been on in the chat very much lately, but we do appreciate you being back in the comment section. So he says, welcome back. I agree. I can definitely see the Authority silhouette. I think he's referring to either Silhouette Animator, who was in the chat that day, or he's talking about the Authority
the
silhouette
Justice
as
League
in
instead
like
of
the
the Justice League, it's
shadows.
the Authority.
Yeah. I can definitely see the Authority silhouette, and they actually show the Engineer at the season finale of Peacemaker season 2 to kind of tease out
or replace them with Justice
like
League.
retroactively, you mean?
Yeah.
You know what? That could work.
Yeah,
really
no,
well.
I mentioned that. I'm like, you're like, yeah, that sounds cool. So I was
That
like,
would be perfect, actually. That would be perfect. And
well,
then
the
he's
thing
like,
is,
oh,
maybe here wouldn't be part of the team yet, and it's just like,
yeah,
just the 5 of them. I think there's usually 6, so it's like the 5 of them.
right. Well, it would be interesting to see if that's the direction they go in, because certainly to me, when
The
James Gunn said they're
Authority,
gonna deal with
fucking
it,
you have no authority over this dick, you fuckwads. It's just like Peacemaker just screaming at them.
I mean,
You're too fucking late, idiots.
I wonder if it's gonna be like "fuck you, Midnighter." Is there gonna be one of those lines? I bet if they do it, they're gonna have to be on the
What, or
nose
like
and keep the line of dialogue in there.
maybe it's like, you know how like John Cena, the Peacemaker, was like spouting like rumors, and like maybe
Mm-hmm.
Apollo and Midnighter aren't like out as gay yet. And Peacemaker definitely seems like
Oh,
the guy that would out someone because he's an asshole.
yes,
And he's like, why don't
yes.
you, and Midnighter could be like, why don't you go fucking suck Apollo's dick, Midnighter? And then he's like, wait, does he know? No, I don't know if he knows. And it's just like, I mean, it's terrible.
I
You
would love
never,
that.
by the way, never out anybody. That's never a good thing.
No.
Don't do that. But like, I'm just saying, Peacemaker's an asshole, so he would definitely do that. And he was reading all these like conspiracy theories, like,
Yes.
oh yeah, like fucking what was it? Green Arrow has like a scat fetish or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you know, it's like he says like all this dumb shit, but yet the one thing like he says like on the off is like the actual thing that like
Actual, like, it's correct. Yeah, and
it's
I think
actually
that,
correct that they're
dude.
gay.
Yeah.
So
You might have nailed it. I think that might be the perfect way to do it. Although that means that then James Gunn is gonna pretty much cast the entire Authority team and
unless it's
already
like
have that in place.
silhouetted and you
Yeah, but then
know,
you still, if you're gonna go far enough to have the lines of dialogue, I don't know. I'm just saying, but it would be interesting. It would be fun, interesting. I think it would be a perfect tease, and then that would also answer the question for potentially what unannounced project we're getting in 2027. I mean, I know the Authority is technically announced, but maybe that becomes the next movie after, Lanterns. So, yeah, I think that's a great theory, O'Shea. Thanks again for checking in, and we love your comments. Keep dropping them down below, and we'll keep addressing them on the show. So we have one more comment. We're going back to Jay for this one, who I think he just watches the videos and comments as he goes, and and he has got a lot of good questions and thoughts and theories to share. So here he's got a question for you, John, and he's asking you, what did you not like about the Watchmen TV series, and was there anything about the series that you did like?
I mean, I try again. I said this before. I didn't watch the whole thing. I tried to watch. I think I watched like the first episode, and I'm like, I can't get it. I thought the dialogue was terrible. I thought it was cringeworthy. I thought it was Damon Lindelof going after trends and not doing anything meaningful. It just felt like he wanted to do his own thing,
Mhm.
but like I need to be part of an IP, so I'm gonna ruin this IP and like do my own thing. Oh, it's not, it's like an adaptation, but it's like it's not, it's a remix. It's like just do your own fucking thing then. And then what they tried to do with oh, I forget the character name, the guy with the uh I'm gonna have to look it up later. But I think the Hangman. I think that was the guy who had like the noose around his neck. I forget what his actual name was,
Oh God,
but
yeah.
in
Okay,
the
I know who you're
comic,
talking
it
about,
was
but the
never
name
revealed who
I,
he was. But
yeah.
here they make him like this black police officer that takes the law into his own hands, and like he made himself look white. And it like the way that like they did it made no fucking sense, and like they broke their own like logic, and it just like they made like Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias was just so over the top and ridiculous. And this is like going off of like clips I saw later, and then I
Yeah.
mean maybe it's the greatest show ever, and like the first episode
It
was
did get
bad.
Emmy nominations. I think it even won a few, and it was very well received. But I
It's
personally
just like I
actually
couldn't get
enjoyed the
into
Zack
it.
Snyder take better. I thought it was because
Yeah, I
I
thought that
mean,
was better.
yeah, I mean, but then then again, I will throw the question your way. But was it comic accurate? you
Well,
know?
I mean, it's not even like at that point, it's just not even coming. It's just like doing whatever the fuck you want and
Yeah,
just like slapping the name Watchmen on it. And it's like,
yeah,
all right, okay.
yeah. I think it was a very like social messaging chart, like it was much more integrated and laced into the storytelling than like what the comics usually would do. They would do it in a way that feels more subtle and a step removed, and yet it's addressing those issues, whereas this sort of did it much more on the nose, head on, which again, it depends on if that's your cup of tea or not. I think that the show had its moments. I personally, like I said, still enjoy the take that Zack Snyder had on the Watchmen comic books, and the movie that he
Because it was
did.
like his interpretation. And
Yeah,
agree or disagree, I didn't mind it. I thought it was an
yeah,
interesting way of doing it.
yeah. Well, I mean, hey Jay, there you go. There's a question answered. And to any of you guys in the chat and watching live, or watching this, and when once the show is uploaded to YouTube, let us know in the comments if you have any questions for John, if you have any questions for me, for both of us. If you want us to go through our top 5 lists of any kind, or if there's another TV show or movie you'd like to ask us about, we would love to respond and get you our thoughts, because of course John isn't the biggest fan of Damon Lindelof's work or Tom King, and for reasons his own. I personally, I'm looking forward to Lanterns and seeing how they do that, because it looks like James Gunn has been impressed by the quality of the scripts that they've presented to him. So if you can't just trust James Gunn in one breath and then also say that the people he's hired are terrible, because I mean, and what, I'm saying that could be true, that they could have a mixed record, but it looks like at least this particular project, the Lanterns project, looks promising. With that said, though, Watchmen, it aired, it had its run, it won Emmys, it was well received by a lot of people, and yet it wasn't necessarily the most comic accurate iteration, which is okay. But it's been another great episode of a DCU Daily, John. We talked about the Batman 2, which I thought, which my favorite part of the show today was that for sure, because I'm really excited to see now. I think the pieces connect. Edward Elliot, Thomas Elliot, Hush, Court of Owls, the Penguin is hanging about, Oz Cobb, the last name Cobb. The Watcher is watching. I'm sure he's putting the pieces together, like Bruce Wayne shirtless in his, gothic mansion, spray painting the ground. So I'm excited to see what comes of the Batman 2. Hopefully we'll get, the confirmation that the script is finished soon. And then, of course, John, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of DCU Daily. Lots more news to discuss. We'll get into more fan theories. We'll get into your comments. Hit that like button if you haven't already, and hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. And of course, if you hit the subscribe button, then go ahead and tickle that notification bell, so that way when we go live another show or have a new video going up on the channel. And as always, it's been a pleasure. Go out there, watch something DC related, then come back to us and talk to us about it tomorrow on the show. And in the meantime, drop your comments down below, and we'll pick those out, and then we'll talk about them in the next show. Thank you, John, for joining us for another episode. We'll see you tomorrow on DCU Daily.